Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Stephanie Brown from Intelligent Construction Opportunities. I know everybody's just jumping on if they're jumping on. Very excited for today's topic. I think it's been a long time in coming. Intelligent Construction Opportunities is here to be the gap filler between the construction professionals and the tech solution providers. And I think that obviously AI is something that is on everyone's mind, pro, con, or indifferent. And today we've got a fantastic lineup to start to open up this conversation from both sides of the aisle, as they say. So what Intelligent Construction Opportunities does is we help to strategically help you to choose your technologies. There's so many out there now, and with AI being bolted on to so many, I'll say, fundamental construction technologies, the choice gets harder and harder every day to know where to put your investments as far as your technologies are concerned. So we're going to do a number of things today. We're going to try and do an overview of project planning and operations, try and talk a little bit about resource planning, because obviously that's so important to the skilled trades. Safety is another component, and we'll try and round it out with quality control. But right now, I want to jump to our guests, and I want them to, we'll go around the frame, and we'll see, we'll introduce each other and tell a little bit about yourself and, why you're doing what you're doing now. So we'll start with Joe Datillo. He's co-founder of MyPaintBuckets.
Hey.
Welcome,
So my background is I've been developing software since I was a wee little tot, back when most people didn't have computers. And I am the co-founder of MyPaintBuckets with Chris, who's a good friend that I met in the military. And then he started jumping into paint while I was developing software. So I am leading the efforts in not only project management and development, but the path that we're taking in AI as someone experienced in it.
Okay, terrific. And Heath, you're next up.
Yeah, I'm Heath Willis. I've worked in the construction trades for 26 years, been both about half of that as project management and half in the actual trades. Working in the field mostly as a plumber / pipe fitter. And we've worked most of my career in Memphis, around Memphis, and I've traveled parts of the United States doing work as well. I'm just happy to be here.
Terrific. Thank you and welcome. And Matt Windmiller, go for it.
Pleasure, guys. Happy to be here. So I myself have been building since a wee toddler like Joe and building software. So went to school to be a construction professional after I had the fortunate opportunity of building our family home. That was my first crash course, and have been doing this for a living ever since. Met James, my co-founder, early on, and absolutely love building. Been in more or less the general contracting space since I've been a professional, but James and I will tell you all about the best part about what we got to do was be the chameleon and put ourselves in the trade shoes day in, day out. And Monday we were the electrician, Tuesday we're the painter. And that was the best part about what we got to do when we were in the space. And the next step for us is to build a fundamental tool, not because of AI, but because AI allows us to do what we're about to do. And that's what we're most excited about, to make a broader impact with the same love and tenacity for the built world. So we're excited.
Terrific. Thank you, Matt. And Chris.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, depending on which time zone you're in. First, Stephanie, thank you again for having us on. Super excited to be with all these big brains again and meet some new big brains with Heath here. So incredibly glad to be here. As Joe mentioned, retired military, but I am the founder of MyPaintBuckets.com. spent some time in the painting industry and realized, wow, there is some inefficiencies here that technology would be best suited for. So that's where we have built MyPaintBuckets to hopefully deliver some efficiencies both at the foundational tech level and then as well as leveraging AI.
Fantastic. And James, tell us a little bit about your background. You got a degree, I believe, in electrical engineering. Is that right?
I'm informally trained as an electrical engineer. I started my career with the United States Coast Guard. I'm glad to be here, glad to see all of you. It's nice to become a part of a movement. As I worked in construction, it became very apparent that the leverage was becoming one-sided, where the guys actually doing the work seemed to be dealing with all the stress, right, and not really given the resources that they needed to succeed in some instances. So, but to Matt's point, we've been looking for a solution and little tiny here and there trying to fix some workflows, but once we started to really dig into technology and see what has become possible with like this unbelievable change we're watching, really is like, it's an amazing thing to be a part of, to watch how quickly everything's changing and just to get it in the best place to make the biggest difference for the people making the biggest difference, right? Allowing builders to be builders and not have to be so concerned with the red tape, you know, get the hammers back in their hands and getting them building like they've always intended to do. So I'm glad to be here.
And honor the craft that they bring. I think that that gets lost sometimes in the images we paint of one another.
Absolutely.
Thank you, James. And Elijah.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. Yeah, I think it's exciting to be back, honestly. I feel like I was just here not too long ago with Chris, at least. And yeah, I'm Elijah. I'm from Roger. We do accountability and we do proactivity, really, as our two main values that we bring to projects, project managers. We've been focused on PMs, PEs at GCs and specialty trades for years now. And the goal is just making teams efficient, let them do more with their time. And I think a lot of our goal is to minimize, automate the administrative overhead, checking in with people, following up on items so that they can get back to, I think, like James, you're saying, like we're all saying, honoring the craft, i.e. using their brains for the most complex, important problems and taking a lot of those other things kind of off the plate. And so, yeah, like everyone's saying, that the AI wave has been really great for us and really great for construction, I think, because a lot of those things can be taken off someone's plate and instead they can use what they're best at to the benefit of the project. So really excited to be here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Elijah. So, so what sort of spawned this was a little bit of an earlier conversation with Chris. So a nice shout out to Chris for sort of thinking along these lines. Credit where credit's due always. And then I ended up having just an arbitrary follow-up conversation with the OBI guys. And to me, they told such a compelling story about why they've done what they've done and they've pivoted into technology. So Matt and James, if you can sort of kick us off here and start to talk about, the journey that got you to where you are at this minute.
Absolutely. So James and I met as builders. I was a Turner tot, as we were called externally, but I can say proudly that I had that foundation. We worked for Turner Construction. So #1 ENR last year, the huge firm. They're owned twice over. Their parent company and their parent's company makes them the largest contractor in the world. All to say, we got to work on one of the most complex, challenging projects, I'd say, in the last decade. It was on the east side of Manhattan, and we had an incredible pleasure to be surrounded by talented people. And because it was such a large-scale project, we had yet another pleasure of hyper-focusing on a very unique scope. And more or less what it was MEP integration into lab systems. So working backwards from the end user being the most complex, high-demanding end user you could imagine, Nobel laureate winning doctors and researchers, we got to build to them in very much a design-build environment for a couple different reasons. And one of those was a couple errors made in the engineering and planning phase and tied to procurement. And we got to think on our feet and sprint, and I mean sprint back to the office to solve a problem on the computer and sprint back to the field to at least plan, if not implement that solution, or so we thought it was a solution before we decided it wasn't, and we needed to iterate and do it again. And we did that for more than a year together. We saw that project through, and we more or less at the same time, not together, but made the decision to go to a smaller firm for a lot of different reasons, the most of which was the opportunity to have a broader impact and take what we learned in that unique project and hopefully scale it. And we did so. So now picture us doing more or less the same thing, but across all trades as true construction managers of projects, and plural, sometimes several at the same time. And this was through the construction arm of a real estate firm. So a little bit more empowerment in the sense that we weren't held to due process at times by the client. We were the client, we were the executioner. And yet the same problems persisted, right? Time and time again, the inability for us now as owner and executioner to manage our own expectations about what's feasible, the skill, the talent, the scale of our workforce to implement builds that we were very much repeating over and over. So it forced our hand to take a look at maybe the underbelly of why these issues are persisting at large scale, small scale, across all divisions in construction, from the guys erecting steel to the guys putting the finishing coat of paint on a wall in a finished office space, Class A Manhattan. The issues would persist. And by our estimates, there'd be always one, sometimes two or three contractors that were at real risk of getting themselves across the finish line and in turn a project, right? In construction, we are truly as strong as our weakest link to the fullest extent. And the construction managers might be best suited to realize that reality because they see the scale of the project from end to end. And the weakest link will be the failure or success story. So James and I, being the chameleons, like I mentioned in the intro that we are, would put ourselves in their shoes, and we would help them across the finish line, truly in every way possible, from the planning phase, the Post-its and Heath's whiteboard behind him, get us fired up inside. I know the fire in James's belly is alive right now because pole planning was the way we would solve very complex issues with a lot of different stakeholders in the room. And as amazing as document control and the collaboration softwares that we have today are, we learned more about each other and accomplished 10x what we did in a 2-3 hour session. They were intense and lengthy than we did probably in 10, 20, 30 weeks of construction through communication over dashboards. So we said to ourselves years ago, there has to be a way to merge the value you get of being in the same room and building, but do it at scale with a dashboard, maybe as the underbelly. So fast forward to really the beginning of 2023, but end of 2022, GPT-3 comes on the scene. The world is freaking out because now AI is in front of their face, right? AI has been ingrained in society for decades, but now it's in front of your face. It's I guess less offensive to a lot of people when they use facial recognition or they type something in Google Maps that AI didn't bother them. But now that we're typing in natural language a question or a thought, and we're getting questions on our questions and answers on our answers that are better than our most evolved thoughts in return, it started to provoke a lot of people, but also spark some imagination. I would say for James and I, it was very much both. We still to this day talk about a lot of the pitfalls for society, but particularly for the industry.
Well,
and
we want to get
much
into those pitfalls
Yeah.
though too,
Well,
right? I mean, Matt, and
absolutely.
also I want the group to kind of jump in too. Is there something that Matt has, said that resonates, with you guys? As I said, I want to kind of play a pro and con thing here. So yeah, we understand why. Can you sort of get a little more focused on the submittals aspect, Matt? So that we can-
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
So to short circuit, the end game for James and I is inspired by what's possible today. We look at AI as a means of actually automating micro tasks within overall processes that then in turn make up the planning phase of a project. And submittals, one of our first use cases as part of our MVP, is exactly that. So the idea that the skilled worker, too often, especially in smaller to medium-sized businesses, the same person stapling electronically documents to submit on a dashboard the scope that they plan to install is the same person, man or woman, that should be in the field planning, if not directing work, right? And we've seen that firsthand. So baseline, we are looking to assemble submittals on their behalf, and in turn streamline the effectiveness of the information transfer on the back end of the submittal workflow. So this is our first use case. We could talk about a lot of potentials, but at the end of the day, we have seen also firsthand submittals with a lot of quality in instruction and feedback from the AEs come back and basically get lost in the sauce. We're talking about, at the end of the day, millions of documents that get transferred over the course of a project's life cycle, and what matters often gets lost. So we are picking out, with the help of AI, particularly retrieval augmented generation, what mattered in that submittal review. If it was 100 pages times 11-inch tall sheet, that's hundreds and if not thousands of inches. Sometimes it's a 2-inch stanza that the very relevant piece of information was translated by the AE. So putting that into a cover page that the executioner or the contractor can take to the field and not sift through a document that they just printed back at their office 20 minutes away is the value.
So
baseline
Matt,
that we're to produce.
do you think you could maybe define what a micro submittal is for people in the audience? Because it's
Sure.
There's a lot of keywords being thrown out there. I'm not sure that the
And
whole
they're kind of on the
audience
tech side,
is
yeah.
and not everyone's going to
absolutely.
understand that. So if they like a quick definition of what a micro transmittal is, would probably help anyone watching.
Sure. So I look at submittals as a microcosm as the overall picture of procurement, right? Submittal is tying the plans and specifications, what architect, engineer, owner would like to be installed one day as part of their project. And they've done well to specify that. But there's a lot of information either missing or requiring clarification or at least confirmation from the responsible party, the contractors. The submittal, to me, is a vehicle that transports information from architect and engineer back to the contractor through a PDF document, simply put. So our idea is that if we can automate the production, the assembly, and then the transfer of that information, we're winning, because on the subcontractor side, from their perspective, they're saving time at the end of the day.
It's important.
Okay. Yeah.
Stephanie,
ahead,
I think it's important because when you initially start to try and become more efficient, right? The keyword more efficient is I learned a long time ago that, you start to make processes, right? Like open shut processes that you take from beginning to end the same way every time, right? And by making them more refined, sometimes you try to trim the fat and eliminate unnecessary tasks. Where the problem had arose was when you noticed that these tasks are absolutely essential, right? There's no way to get rid of them, and there's no way to take the intelligent interpretation out of it either, right? So what it's allowed us to do with technology is now still let the process happen, but have it carried out by a very capable, right, very detail-oriented, and even from a perspective of whoever the individual is that's carrying out that task. And I think that that's where this became unique, is you try to lean, right? Lean was the buzzword, and still I think should be, because there's a lot of value in thinking lean processes when you build, right? And try to trim down all of your workflows. But it comes to a point where it's lean, and that's as you have to do these tasks. And now we're finding that we're able to accomplish tasks that still have to be done, but can be done in a repeated way, right? And allow for very detailed documentation and re-retrieval, as well as qualifying and quantifying at a later date, right? To reuse the data again in order to further become more efficient and streamline your process. So it was very telling when I noticed that contractors were giving sometimes not complete change orders for large values of money. And to me, when I was young, I kept saying, like, this is your money. Why aren't you giving me like the best write-up that you could ever imagine to try and substantiate the value so that you get paid in its full? And then it was because I realized they're so bogged down elsewhere to reviewing submittals and trying to be the ones in the field doing pre-planning instead of reactiveness. Because once you get into the reactiveness of a certain project, there's no turning back. It's like a snowball, because now there's no pause button. So it's like you fall behind, and then it's just an inevitable tumble down a hill, it could feel like. And it's because of there's a lot of work to be done that's essential. And so these
But
tools
I want to kind of get also into the counterpoint. So you talk about all these tasks. So as smart as AI can be in certain scenarios, Chris had brought up, what are we leaning too far into AI foundationally? How are we going to possibly dig out the minutia in the average task of, say, hanging sheetrock, for the purposes of trying to narrow it, for a hospital builder, who does a certain kind of a build repeatedly, and yet the hospitals are different. The sheetrock hanging is different for each project. How are we possibly going to dig out the minute steps that are taken so that this AI is, quite frankly, it's learning from us anyway? And I do think that we need skilled tradespeople to actually talk to AI about what's really happening within the scope of their trade alone, and then the minutia of the trade. So Heath, I mean, this to me is your opportunity to jump in. Your boots on the ground. How does
my perspective is, I think that it's kind of got to come from both ends at the same time. I think that you're only good as your data. So the data from the top end, from the architect, as far as submittals, it's got to be accurate. It's got to be 100%. It can't have multiple choices for your specification on all of this equipment. Because, like, in order for the AI to integrate down to a specific submittal on HVAC equipment or toilet, a toilet,
So let's get
what type of flush valve, it's got to, the data's got to be very specific on the front end, and at the same time at the back end, you've got to apply this to not just the plumber, but the labor and apprentice that's got to be able to recognize this and figure this out. And I know it's a learning process and a kind of an integration of past and present, as far as that goes. But to me, it's about the data and the data that you're able to project in order for this AI to work together. But I honestly see it. I see how it's going to benefit. I see how the submittal process, like Matthew was talking about, that it's going to work. It's going to happen. It's going, because it can take forever for us to get an accurate submittal and get it submitted and get it approved. Whereas if AI cuts out all of the mistakes that honestly we make in the submittal process, just by human error, not checking the specs correctly or something of that nature.
I think that's a great point, right? Like just to kind of like rewind slightly to what Heath mentioned, which was the data piece. I'll let Joe riff on some of the complexities there, but if we I think to what you mentioned, Stephanie, like the counterpoint, like I'll just say I don't think it's a counterpoint, but maybe just something for the industry to think on. When Joe and I first entered the market, the first thing we talked about AI, right? We said, hey, we see AI coming down the road. Should we get in now? Should we get in later? What are the pros and cons? But I think, fundamentally what we've been seeing is from any of the big consulting agencies, I mean, the proof is there, right? There needs to be more AI adoption in construction, right? But I think if you break it down into a more granular level, and I'll tie this into what Heath is saying, it's well, where are the gaps, right? Is it at the macro level, that the very high up, GC level, I'll say, or is it down at the trade worker level? And so that's where Joe and I, at least our strategy is going, well, okay, well, let me first off, if we rewind the clock 2017, let me go see what's out there that is specific to my needs as a painter in new residential construction. I would even, sorry, forgive my language, but I would even take like, a platform that's even aligned to like, for example, drywall. There was nothing specific to the trade workers, right? And so to tie this into what he says, right, when you start to break it into that granular level, I think that is where we should at least start to talk more about is going, where are those applications that are delivering first and foremost value to trade workers, and then two, delivering data that could be leveraged in other applications like OBI, Roger, and anyone else out there. Joe, I'll let you. I mean, what are your thoughts, at least on the technical aspects and challenges there?
Well, I think that the big thing is to look at, and actually I see Alexander from LinkedIn's comment, and it's really closely related, right? There's a lot of very specific problems to each of these trades. And
right, yeah.
the data for that has to kind of be informed and refined by those individual trades. So what we end up with, instead of one monolithic way of helping everyone with AI, is a group of hundreds, if not thousands, of very specific AIs that need to get trained to answer those kind of questions accurately with very carefully selected data. And this really plays with what was being said about the data refinement and how important it is to have very specifically honed segments, right? It's very dangerous to have too much data, because basically garbage in, garbage out, as has been said before. But if you have too much data, AI doesn't inherently know how to like plug in a light bulb or do any of those things that are real. We have to teach it.
And it's quite frankly why it's come how far it has come is because of us to begin with. So in order, I mean, yes, garbage in, garbage out, but it's even more nuanced than that. And I think you're completely on the right track when you use the word monolithic. I think too often construction technology has been thrown at the wall monolithically. And there's no structures that are, you know, I mean, even if it's a developer like here in Canada, Cadillac Fairview, you know, producing shopping mall after shopping mall, they're still obviously in different locations and have different terrain and so on and so forth that determine how that shopping complex is going to be built. So I just also wanted to call out to Mark Dearman. I agree with the A to B because it's B to C, but then it's D to E to F. It's also to get away, first of all, from the monolithic kind of models that we've been sort of selling construction technology, but I do think it comes back to the process. Matt, you wanted to jump in here on something to reinforce Heath and Chris's point.
Exactly. So twofold. First of all, Heath's perspective, and if I may, Heath, try and garner your perspective. The fact that he's immediately taking onus on the fact that the data in will be the determining factor of the quality of the output of any AI he engages with is impressive first and foremost, but fundamental to how they succeed. So we have a huge task, we being the construction industry, to refine that data. And just some mind-blowing facts and figures for all of us, and some of you guys probably know this well, that the fact that 90% of construction data that we compile over the life cycle of a project goes completely unutilized. By that I mean it's not retrieved during the course of its life cycle. It's just retained. So if we can, one, improve the quality of the 100% of data, and then make more accessible the 100% and turn that 10% usage into 12, 14, hopefully one day nearer 100%, the value we'll see in return is going to be tremendous.
I think this is a good jump off point for Elijah, actually, because we want to talk about operational AI, and particularly to me, MyRogers is so capable of, if you will, collating that kind of task.
Yeah, I'll do a double jump, which is a little bit on us and a little bit on what's been said. I think I want to double click on the specificity. I think coming out of this chat, one of my biggest takeaways that I want to share is like AI needs to become specific solutions to specific problems, right? And that's with specific data and all those other things, right? If you take Procore really succeeded at the general contractor level, but is really trying to back into all these other side use cases. And I think we can agree that it hasn't fit well with specialty trades, and they've had a hard time backing into owners because they didn't really start with them in mind, right? Now they're just trying to figure out how to move their weight around. And the AI and the way that we build in these tools, I think we've all agreed, like really become specific to need in the field. For us, we try and build and I think OB or OBI, you guys are trying to do the same thing, which is it's an infrastructure, right? And it's a way for people to engage with AI in a way that will help them solve their problems. And I think about AI really in 3 buckets. There's this idea of predictive AI, where it's going to help me understand what's the most likely outcome or avoid issues. There's operative AI, which to me is just streamlining tasks, right? Everyone kind of thinks of that AI as writing my emails, reminding me to check in on something when I've forgotten, that sort of AI. And then there's this descriptive AI, which is, I think, mostly what OB you guys are really hoping, which is actually utilizing data, being able to access it, being able to ask questions and have it generate answers. And all of those things, I think, will have a place in construction, right? Because all of those are problems that we're looking to solve. So I kind of throw that out as just also a talking point. Like, do we think I'm missing pillars of what AI can do for us? Do we think that there are things that we should be focused on in terms of each one of those buckets? Is one more important than the other? Is predictive more important than operative? Like, how are you guys thinking about that interchange?
Well, I think one thing is to also include kind of like we start from this really, really high level in AI, but the natural next step is actually working into standard statistical analyses and actual more mathematical predictions, which get rid of some of the risk of introducing error. So as you work your way down, older tools are still reliable ways of prediction. So you don't always have to jump into a neural net or a cloud computing solution for every problem. And that there's hundreds of libraries that have been created around AI and statistical analyses. And so we really have to look at every data set and determine whether or not we are using the right tool to answer a question. Because if we don't have a question that we're trying to answer, we're really just throwing stuff at the wall. And I'm really worried about giving answers to someone in the field that we made up on accident. That's my biggest worry, having spent a lot of time in LLMs, that they're really great at writing fiction for me. And I don't want to introduce fiction into someone's process planning. That is my biggest fear jumping in, is making sure that each of us, as we dive into AI, is keeping that in mind and protecting our users from fake information, because AI is very confident. Ask ChatGPT just about any question that hasn't been pre-programmed to say, I'm not allowed to answer this, and you will get an answer. It'll be fabulous. It will most likely be fiction. And each of us is in an industry that cannot accept that. So we have to be careful.
I'd like Heath to jump in, because he's using technology. And I want to kind of take a day in a life, Heath, of what you're doing with technology now. And if you could wave a wand, AI or not, what would you want to automate? What is like such a pain in the ass that you like, why can't I just get something else to do this for me?
So, from my 30,000 foot view, this obviously the job site I'm on now, the building is 3,900 foot long. So, the number one most repetitive task is obviously walking. So in my, a lot of what I do is go inspect a lot of this mechanical equipment. What I would like to see AI do is, potentially like have sensors, cameras, or something of that nature. And I know I've seen some preliminary stuff that they're trying as far as the sensors on the hard hats and stuff of that nature. But I think if there's a possibility of creating the sensors to, pretty much pick everything up within the building and be able to upload the model, the BIM model with that, and you could track the productivity based on what the BIM model shows versus what's not there. I think that would, as far as my perspective, that would be a big help to. I know my APMs would love that because they're the ones who go track all this every day by hand. You know, and that crosses many levels because that goes to the skilled workers too to say, hey, we're, you know, once you have the model uploaded, you can incorporate the schedule with that and go, crap, we're like 10 days behind in this area. We need to pick up progress, you know, because you can, it's kind of, to me, it's limitless, you know, how much, if you input the correct data and the right amount of data, you can see it's going to take 8 men 6 days to complete this area, or, you know, if you have this, if the schedule allows, you know, if it's within that time frame. So, I mean, that's what I would like to see, you know, and that's large scale, obviously, because, you know, this is one of the largest construction sites I've been on. But it, you know, on the submittal side, that would, you know, I really see the benefit of streamlining that process. But like, you know, I think the architect has to not give so many options, you know, for one, on certain submittal processes, and you got to be able to refine it in order for the AI to funnel it down to the end user.
And who do you see using that? Sorry, and then you can go. Who do you see actually using this, you know, new application? A project manager on the site?
Well, it would definitely be most beneficial to the construction manager to see accurate tracking. Like, there's no BS in the tracking. You're not listening to the electrician say, "Oh, we're 90% complete in this area," and then the data says, "Nah, they're slacking. You know, they're not that far along. They're just." So I think it would give accurate tracking on a daily basis, and, you know, and to attribute to the safety aspect, you don't have that person walking the job site and exposed to safety hazards doing so. And two, I think the same model, the sensors could, if they're a living sensor and not one on a hard hat that's going to leave the job site, you know, I think there's a lot of potential as far as recognizing safety hazards from just having a living view of what's going on at the job site, such as improper scaffolding or trip hazards or no toe boards, or, you know, when data is presented, I think it'd be a lot easier on a safety professional to get an email saying, "Hey, Roger or OBI has detected there's no toe boards on this scaffolding in this area," than to have to go and monitor.
Honestly, like me and Chris were talking, and we were trying to like riff on how we would cover safety, and it's really cool that is so close to home for you. Because basically you've been diving into a super niche data set. It feels really big to you, but like, it's a very specific couple sets of problems that interest you. So I like the way you've broken it down into like a couple key kind of data points, like where all your workers are physically on a job site. And then you've touched on some image analysis pieces. And then, like, just looking at the example you've described over the last little bit, we're talking 4 different AI tools at least that would be required to tackle each of those individual problems, because they're really different. But like, it's really cool to jump into very specific problems, because the more specific you get, the better refined that data could be, right? Like, let's just take the example of tracking positional data in the helmets. Say you were to create a mesh network on the job site, have they've got sensors that'll do exactly what you're talking about already. you put one of those in the helmets, and then you just see how many of your construction workers quit when you tell them that. Then after the attrition of your employment from being tracked by the man, then there is some valuable stuff in there. And this is the big thing, is going back to what we were talking about before. The adoption level on technology diminishes the closer you get to the tradesperson, right? At the end of the day, the individual tradesperson doesn't want to be on their phone. They don't want to do anything other than make a phone call and be like, boss, it's done. Where's my money? That's it. Like, the further away you get from the plumber who's fixing the pipes, the easier this kind of adoption becomes. But understand that the industry, it's very important that we hold on to our really good experts in the field too. So we, as people who are creating technology to help, have to keep that in mind, that where the risk is in losing seasoned professionals because we're pushing this too hard on them too.
Well,
So,
I also think this is our opportunity, though, to address the elephant in the room. And that is that because skilled trades people do exactly what you're describing as their day in and day out, and they just boss, the job's done, where's my money, is their output. I think we have to start to wrap our arms around the fact that they need to be a part of the process, and there needs to be more information written about how they, as craftspeople, will still stand regardless of technology. I mean, there are technologies now, there's robots now that are replacing some sort of form of brick masonry. And, you know, we all have our own little lists. I'll be providing a list after this live stream for people that want it, of, you know, various different AI inflicted applications. But I think we have to make sure that they understand the purposes for these things and how it's going to affect them and not affect what they do as skilled tradespeople. And those conversations, as far as I'm concerned, are the responsibility of all construction technology producers.
Yeah. No, I
And,
mean, I would go for it.
Well, and what my, you know, as you're talking through that and referencing the skilled trades workers, the most skilled trade ones, you know, that's your foreman, that's your superintendents. Those are the guys that have the most experience in the field. And in order to, I think that AI and, you know, data information stuff is going to eliminate a lot of paperwork for them and be able to actually mentor the
Totally.
you know, the up and coming guys. And man, you ask those guys, you ask the superintendents, and you ask the foreman, they hate paperwork. They hate the daily reports, the pre-task analyses, and you know, when that can be a data dump, it's you know, allows them to do their job more efficiently and make sure the job's done in a quality manner.
Totally. I couldn't agree more. I think I was going to say the same thing, which is hopefully, I think there's been a period of time in construction technology in general where the burden of data creation has been rested on the tradespeople, anyone in the field, anyone in the trailers, because the executives wanted tools that gave them reporting on exactly these sorts of things, on productivity, on their daily reports, on all these sort of items. And I think the new wave, the new phase of what we have to do, and the burden that I think the technology companies as we grow should be carrying, is maximizing the efficiency of the people in the field, right? So that they don't have to touch the technology, or that as much of it can be automatic, so that the executives get what they want, and that the people in the field can actually do what they're best at. And the AI, to the extent that it can, just serves as a middleman in getting everything where it needs to go, right? And that burden has to be on the tech companies. to make that a reality rather than a burden.
Matt, go for it.
Yeah, so many great points going back from Joe's beginnings on adoption. The beauty of AI in our industry is that the leverage is entirely with the trades. Two-part, right? They are going to drive the adoption rate, because when we put it in their hands, if it doesn't make their lives easier, not tomorrow but today, it won't be well received. And part two is, guess what? The demand for them to exist and continue to do what they do better than they did yesterday is far greater than the supply. Even with the loss of the workforce, we all know about the troubles with the boomers phasing out of our industry, unfortunately. But we're 500,000 workers short this year to deliver mission critical projects in this country. That's domestically. So the beauty of it is that only the quality products that are delivered are gonna have any chance, forget about lasting, being adopted from at day one. So I just want to highlight that that's one of the beautiful things about our industry. And I think, like we had spoken about earlier, guys, everyone's going to be looking at us, because when they talk about AI adoption in industry and verticals, we don't even come up on the chart, right? We are not a KPI. I've seen some that include industrial manufacturing as a consideration. I have not seen once, and James and I now have been to too many of these summits and conferences to count. We're not there. So that's the beauty of it. Anything that makes its way onto a job site will be providing value inherently. So,
and that's just to jump in real quick. That's a great point. What Matt said with the phasing, right, and that skilled labor shortage is going to remain. And so what does that mean is the companies, tradespeople, companies, they have to start looking now, right? Because what is that? If you're not adopting even just fundamental tech right now, and you wait for your competitors to start, leveraging AI as an example, or any one of the platforms we've been talking about, I mean, they're just going to have such an incredible advantage over everyone else that you can't keep up.
100%.
So I think the thing is, how do we start to? Well, I'm working on something in the background personally, anyway, because I feel that this has been such a barrier to digital adoption. And it won't matter how great the tool, to your points, if it's only, accepted and built for the management executive level, it's never going to change. And let's be honest. I mean, construction doesn't exist just because we construct things. It's our infrastructure. It's how we all live and die every day. And it is just so systemic that that one of the tenets of lean that really resonates with me is the respect for all people. It has been lacking in the construction industry in varying degrees, but if we really want to go down a rabbit hole, respecting each other has been lost in a lot of ways across our society. Construction is the tip of the iceberg. But how are we going to make sure that this gets communicated in a usable, digestible way by the skilled trades, so they don't feel that their jobs are threatened and their livelihoods and the skills that they've worked, let's be honest, sometimes decades to get good at what they do. And we have to start making AI serve us and tether out what's the difference between a skilled tradesperson and somebody who, is beginning as a laborer to become a skilled tradesperson. It's just a path. And go ahead, Elijah.
Oh, Matt, I'll let you go first.
Yeah,
I'll swing in after
sure
you.
thing. I just wanted to state that my thesis there would be, Stephanie, the free market reigns, knowledge is empowerment. The reality is the elimination of workforce is starting with the white collars, not the blue collars. It's going to be us last. There's really no doubt about it. It's now being proven. I mean, turn on CNBC Monday and it'll be evident for everybody. So just let them know that go find external sources, right? Don't trust the software developers that are trying to feed you a product that they hope you buy. Don't. Go to the market and take a look at what's happening in the real world. Everyone is learning to appreciate the value of blue collar in a very much counterintuitive way. It's AI in the workplace that's actually bringing all of this to light. But there's a renaissance happening right now, I'd argue, post-pandemic. And it's the fact that we don't need to go get degree on degree on degree. We need to go reimagine what it means to work with our hands, and that's a beautiful thing. I think this is actually accelerating that renaissance in so many ways.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I would pile on that. It just again saying, I think the first thing to go, it's not the actual skill trades and the work that they're doing to build. What's going is the management overhead. It's the administrative, repetitive tasks that they've been given, right? And for them, it's just an opportunity to do more, right? And so I think as you're talking about how do we get people in, it's I think it's a trust game, right? And like you said, Matt, what we need to do is make sure that people get into pilots, get using it, and that they say this actually helped me, right? And as we build trust with them, that what we're freeing them up to do is actually the work that they went out and learned in school and decided they wanted to do with their life, not sit behind a laptop, right? Like that's what we're trying to enable here. And I think it's only a matter of time before people start to understand that mission and grow.
And to your point, not just good, but bad. Sorry, go ahead.
So that word trust, I mean, Elijah nailed it, right? Like, how do you, like AI, I think if you start to really nerd out on the what ifs, and Joe, please jump in with your side of it as well. But the point there is what AI can deliver is that level of trust, meaning if you're fast forward, we've got all the standardized data sets between trades all the way up to, as we've all mentioned, to the executive levels, right? It's hard to hide your inefficiencies. So what does that mean is AI starts to identify, should, trade partner, for example, should I work with this national level home builder when, they're still producing checks or their on-time payment equals, whatever, plus or minus 65 days. Do I want to do business with them? Or would I rather do business with, this other company that has an on-time payment of, as 98%, things like that. Joe, what are your thoughts?
Oh, you're muted.
To your point, and kind of what we've been talking about overall, all of the people down in the lower part of the fields, there's more demand for them than there are them. So we have to make sure that we're driving things that will keep them engaged in what they need to be doing in the field. And I think most of what we've been talking about are things that actually are meant to make their lives easier by making it more efficient for managing their processes. So that's the key thing to keep in mind when we're driving these tasks with AI or other technology, is that we don't actually try and force artificial changes on their processes, and that we don't actually make things less efficient in the field in the process of trying to push tech on them. And James, you've been waiting really patiently, so I'm going to let you jump in and talk about past tech.
Well, I appreciate that. No, it's a great segue from what you were saying, which it's on us to have responsible implementation and training, right? Because I'm sure Heath, being in the MEP world, has been on a job where a BIM model has been used for all of its glory, right? Truly coordinated clash detection run, right? Where you are just, you feel like you're flying. You hit a problem, you're on a computer, you identify whose elevation is off or what, you're back out there. But then on the flip side, I'm sure you've been on one where they just used it for the bells and whistles to look nice, and it actually led to a lot of change orders and a lot of messed up work and cutting holes in walls, repainting. So the implementation, the power of the tool is only as powerful as your ability to teach and slowly and responsibly implement it, right? That's why everyone could say, let's just throw AI at the wall, like to Joe's point, see if it sticks, but it's only gonna tarnish the name, right? And unfortunately, we're at a weird turning point where this is inevitable. This is happening because the market's going to drive it, to Matt's point. Like, it is going to drive efficiencies. The haves and the have-nots are going to be the people that are leveraging, the people that aren't, right? And I think if we show them how it empowers them rather than becomes a part of their arsenal, another tool that they have. And also, when we release a product, take the extra time to do it with care and make sure the trainings are there with it. And you have helplines for follow-ups or any questions that anybody might have, because when it's used properly, a BIM model could be amazing, but I know people that swear by BIM not working, modeling 3D and doing full coordinations because they were on one project that it wasn't done properly because they didn't know. And now they swear it off and they're in a high place. And now on the flip side, there's people that are expediting the overhead MEPs and doing it in such an unbelievable finish level because you can predict and put stuff in the right place. So I think it's on us to the people building this type of technology to make sure that you're doing it with care and for the right reason, to really empower them and release it at a speed that's actually palatable and be ready to coach and be ready to step in and help. I think that's so important. Like you have to do it with passion.
And to add to your point, I think a lot of these guys that some of the younger people don't realize the value of trying to start out in a skilled trade and coming up and integrating into the BIM modeler that understands piping schematics or electrical schematics and how that's going to be installed. And you know what? Those guys that's played Minecraft and those young guys that love those games of that nature, they can jump right in and build a BIM model accurately. And that's the thing, is we need people who know the trades that can go and integrate that stuff. So I feel like that those people can go from digging a ditch to where they're installing the model to and accurately doing so, because that's that's kind of what you're talking about. The guy that don't like the BIM, most likely it's the person who was doing the model was not sufficient at their job, because it's all data dump. I mean, and if we get trained these young people in the trades, because they I've seen our guys that do our BIM modeling, man, they're amazing. They know down to the nut and bolt how to do their job, and it's amazing to watch them and work with them to see them build a model. But that's where it's at. It's like getting these people to embrace the trades and then also understand that the BIM is going to be part of the trades. That's going to be part of the aspect of it that they can jump over to and promote themselves into those positions.
Oh, well, another thing I think we're not doing is construction technology people is trying to marry together the idea of, as you said, Minecraft. I mean, there's not a young person today who's not running around with some form of phone in their pocket and playing some sort of game. And this is a missed opportunity for the construction technologists to absorb that over time, probably a long time, will start to cut at that 500,000 deficit that we're experiencing in the construction labor force. And also marrying it together, lean was brought up earlier, that, again, keeps punching back and instilling this respect level and the principles of lean that will make this industry the damn shining star it needs to be in any good society.
So I know we're running out of time, Stephanie, but I wanted to tie what you're saying with James and then what Heath mentioned and Elijah for that matter. But what I think we're talking about is a fundamental shift in culture. James, the word he used was perfect, right? AI tech needs to be a tool in the craftsman or the trade partner's tool belt, is the first. And how do we get there? And I think that kind of circles way back to the beginning of what Joe and I threw down with is if we look at it right now, there's still a very separate, culture between, nope, this is how I do my painting, or this is how I hang my drywall, and how I do my administrational processes in between. And so, how do we move away from that and first get that level of adoption and then start to leverage the AI? And again, just to reiterate, I think that begins with what James said. It has to be a tool. And then, I've seen some of this floating around through LinkedIn and other channels, but it also, as we've discussed, or as Heath mentioned, we have a generation that is understanding how to design in a 3D game-like environment. And so that means, how do we get that at a sooner level of education? Meaning, we can't divide shop class from coding class, for example. We have
Yeah.
to find a way to pull those two together and show
Mhm.
that there's value in both and working together.
Well,
And honestly, it's powerfully lucrative depending on how you leverage it as you move into, like, as Matthew mentioned, as you move into these skilled trades.
I just want to, we're going to close up shop soon. But I just wanted to address Alexander's question about AI being joined with 3D scanning. Certainly that's already happening with certain softwares like HoloBuilder. I will be providing a list of different tools that are out there to be had. The question is which ones are right for, which situation, types of builds, etc. But for sure, there aren't too many companies with the wherewithal that haven't at least jumped on some sort of bot and now plugged it into their technology capability. As we go around, I just want to know if there's any closing thoughts or ideas from the group in general. Joe, we'll start with you.
Oh, I was just gonna say that, like, it's really important, taking all of what we talked about and some of the comments, that as we're introducing these things, that we're, even if we are creating a new tool, that it doesn't feel like it's a new demand on these people in the field. It's really important for us to create something that feels like it's easier than what they're already doing, and to create tools and processes that feel familiar enough that we can get the adoption, because it doesn't matter how much magic we put into the bullet. If they don't want to touch it, they'll never get that magic sauce that we're trying to make for them. So that's what I want to leave with, is a big challenge for us as developers and creators of these tools, to tackle that part of the problem.
Well said. Heath?
Well, on second thought, after my APM just brought my lunch in to me, I don't think we need to integrate this AI. So, because I'm afraid of
Perfect
losing
segue.
So,
Never mind at all. Never mind at all.
yeah, scratch all this. No, I'm really excited to see where this is heading, and I appreciate it, all the work that you guys are doing in integrating this software and getting this movement going with MyPaintBuckets and OBI.
Yeah, for sure. But we need to have people, as I said to you when we were planning this session today, your voices need to be at the table. And I think, Heath, you're a great representative of that. So thank you. Matt?
Yeah, just 3 words: patience, persistence, and expertise. And I want to give examples from the past for all 3. So patience and persistence, right? The cloud software collaboration dashboards have been prevalent since almost the .com bust in our field. So for the last 10 years, the rate of adoption has been so slow and then exponential. So I see the same for AI once it starts to provide value. And then on expertise, because Heath was making, James and Heath were making great points on BIM, the delta between adoption and rejection, because BIM has become very much binary in that sense, is the expertise. And from my perspective, I came out of a university having drafted in 3D for 5 years. I could not, in my wildest dreams, justify being a BIM coordinator in the built world, because that's not what was important. It wasn't how to navigate a BIM model. It's knowing the difference when you hang a piece of duct between Kindorf and straps and what that does to the inches that you have left before you hit a finished ceiling height. That's the delta. So when you have people leading adoption that are experts in a very specific use case or domain, that's how we'll succeed. So thank you guys very much.
Well said, Matt. Chris?
Sure. So at the end of the day, I think Matthew touched on it, but just to reiterate, like, there's a housing shortage. The need for construction professionals and trade workers, I mean, it's there, right? So the advice that I would pass on is don't worry about how will AI build that house, is instead worry about what will be exposed about my business, my processes, if I'm not leveraging AI and my competitors are. And so what does that tie that all together is there's products as we're talking about right now, OBI, Roger, MyPaintBuckets, there's so small risk in reaching out to any one of us if you're a construction professional and just saying, what are your thoughts? Maybe there's not a good fit, but just having a conversation with some of us might help you and your business just become better, whether or not you use our products or not.
Well said. James?
That's a great point, Chris. We spend a lot of time sitting with trades just to really understand, because I encourage everyone to continuously circle back to their why, right? Why are you doing this? Like, are you trying to help a certain, trade contractors be more successful, put the leverage back in their hand, right? Make construction what it used to be, where, it's prestigious to put up these big buildings, right? Rather than it just being running to the next one and watching the quality continuously depreciate, just because not for any one single reason, right? Because of just a culmination of inevitable reasons, right, that we've been leading towards. So I'm grateful to be here. Great to meet all of you guys, because I could see that we share in that why. And I just think that if we all lead with the passion that got us here as to why we want to make these changes, right, and we implement patiently, right, strategically, and always keep in mind what the end goal is, right, to make the trade contractors be able to get back to what they were used to doing, right, which is actually putting work in place, building these buildings, and not being bogged down with red tape. I think we'll all be in a better place for it. So I'm grateful to be here. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you, James. And Elijah, bring it home.
I'll close this out best as possible. Especially thank you to having all of us. I think this was super fun. I'd love to do this again. I feel like we barely scratched the surface of AI, truthfully. So there's probably another 50 hours of content we could generate.
It's in the plans.
Yeah. I think the message for us is, like, on the technology provider side, is our burden or our purpose is going to be to create simple, lovable, and complete solutions, right? They don't need to do everything, but they need to do the thing that they're meant to do really well. And then, Chris, I love what you said. It's like, if we can promise to do that, if we can promise to give you something that's lovable and complete, then, reach out to us, see why our company exists. The market has said it should exist for a reason. Obviously, we're successful enough to continue to exist. And that means that we're providing a valuable service that I think would put your companies, like you said, ahead of your competitors. And that's a great thing. So we'll make that promise to do right by you, and reach out to us. And, we love everyone that we work with. So.
That was very, Heath, if you just want, Heath wanted to give props to Rogers. So thank you, Heath. Again, I can't thank you all enough. We will continue this conversation. There's no scratching the surface as far as I'm concerned with intelligent construction opportunities. That's why I exist, to figure out how to build the bridge between the two parties, but we need them at the table all the time, not just some of the time. These are huge lifts. Each of you do something very unique and specialized, but you've got lots of breadth and scope to build out your applications, from what I know of your applications in many ways. So let's keep it going, and thank everybody for joining today live. Obviously, the recording will be put out, and everybody can certainly send their comments my way, or any of the ways for MyPaintBuckets, for OBI and MyRoger, and for Harris Mechanical and Heath, for that matter. I think, if you have something that you feel you can buddy up with Heath on and bring yourself to the next table, we're all about it. So thank you again, everybody.
Thank you so much. This was fun.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, everybody.
You're very welcome.
Have a great weekend.
We'll end the stream here.